Going live.
All right.
Welcome once again to the Overtime MMA podcast. We're sorry for the 1 day delay, but I earned myself 2 days of vacation, which I took. I came back to California last night, and it was fuck awful. The people in Portland, excuse me, people in Portland, while their craziness and homelessness abound,
they're super friendly.
They're abundant commodities, but they behave themselves, they mind themselves,
really
they compliment my Sasquatch shirt.
I have to say, I mean, if they find out you are from California, they probably will talk shit on you. Because I have actually heard from multiple sources, and I've seen it myself, where they were just like, yeah, if you're going to try and move here, we won't let you.
Yeah, right.
They're totally anti-Californians.
The way that a lot of Texans are at this point, where it's like, yeah, Austin was really cool for 20 minutes before everybody heard about Austin.
Right.
So I rode public transit the entire time I was in Portland, and it was great, and I had no incidents.
Yeah, don't ride to public transit.
I got on the fucking train in LA, and a guy calls me a faggot and threatens me, and I'm like, no,
I'm sorry, that's not funny.
This can't be happening. And I'm sitting there, and I look at my beautiful fiance, and I hand her my phone, and I move my bag off my lap, and I'm just sitting there going, I'm going to strangle the life out of somebody on a fucking train.
He's about to rape choke somebody.
Seriously, I visualized the light going out of his eyes and how I was completely okay with it because he had, in besmirching my honor, had implicitly kind of been uncouth to my fiance, because you don't say those things. We're clearly together, so you're implying that my fiance is a dude, which we're in California, so gender is whatever. If you're on Tumblr right now,
oh, this is good.
But you know what I mean? I was like, I was envisioning watching the light flood from his eyes. Then asshole's like, oh yeah, I'll go sit over there. So then he sits next to this little old Asian lady and starts swearing up a storm. And I'm like, motherfucker, I am going to beat you with my shoe. Get the fuck away from this nice old lady. He crosses in front of me and he sits like 3 seats beside me. And I'm like, God damn it, I am going to have to kill this man. And it's lucky, for those of you who only listen to the podcast, you can't see my mongoloid eyebrow skull. But if you look at the video right now, you can't see my eyes because my eyebrows are so thick. I have these black pits, and so I'm looking in the reflection, and he sees like black pits.
I can see veins popping out of your neck right now. Just
so pissed. And so I have these black pits of death in the reflection, and I don't take my eyes off of him the entire time until he gets off of the fucking train. And at the exit he gets off, Crazy McPants comes on, and he starts talking about how if we have a female president, we're going to be attacked, and now he hopes it's not like his dream. Then he finds a guy who has an ornate beer bottle and says, oh, that's pretty. And then says that if the woman next to him hits him over the head with it, it's going to hurt. What the fuck are you talking about? What does it have to do with anything? Mind your own fucking business, crazy. I am so ready to be out of California again. Brian, what's wrong with this fucking state we live in?
Well, okay, let me just go ahead and throw this 2 words in here after that long rant. What I was going to go after is essentially after you leave to Portland, all hell breaks loose in the world. How many injuries were there? 2 as of late.
2 big ones, yeah.
2 big ones, exactly. And I'm just like,
there's probably 1,000 that aren't going to be reported until after somebody loses, and they're like, oh, I hurt my wrist and my knee and my brain.
I literally text you right after news broke. This is what happens when you go on vacation. Yeah. So the whole, DC, and then most recently, Habib. That's right.
Well, actually, it's Tony Ferguson.
It's El Kukui.
Yeah, right. The guy who made fun of Khabib Nurmagomedov and said, hey, make sure you show up for our fight because you're injury prone, suddenly found himself injury prone.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more about that one specifically in the broadcast.
It's a little ironic.
Yeah, that's unraveling currently. But so much shit happened while I was gone. We considered doing a special weekend edition, which we've never done. So this is your weekend edition, midweek. Treat it like this. I was still on vacation as of yesterday. So our usual recording days, I was on vacation. So this is a bonus episode that you wouldn't have had otherwise out of the bountiful charity of my heart. So you're welcome.
That's right.
Send me a direct message and say thank you, you ungrateful swine who I love dearly. and please don't turn this off because I called you swine.
Did Kenta Maeda just hit a home run?
I believe Kente Maeda.
Dude, it's his MLB debut.
What a day!
And he hits a home run? Are you kidding? Oh,
for those of you who don't know, we are both Dodger fans.
Sorry.
Lifelong season ticket holder right here, and accomplice to lifelong season ticket ownership.
I might need to watch a replay here. Sorry. I mean,
it's got to happen.
They have to show it again.
But he's a pitcher.
No, wait, no.
How did he do that? We'll see a replay.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure we'll see.
They're celebrating way too much. At the very least, it was a fancy RBI. Who is it? Puig, get the fuck off of the screen, Puig. I hate you.
Oh, Puig, come on, man.
I hate him.
He's killing it right now.
I hate him.
All right. Anyways,
he's modern Manny Ramirez. I said it. I can't unsay it. Anyway, you know what I hate more than Yasiel Puig?
Who's that?
UFC Zagreb. This fight card sucks 10 dicks.
This fight card really bad. I mean, I tried to do as much research as I can on this before the podcast, which is, you know, I mean, it's very uncharacteristic of myself. I mean, I like to tend to think I fly through these podcasts on like, you know, like
seat of your pants.
Seat of my pants, exactly. Like, oh, I'm not gonna, you know, try and do any preparedness for this whatsoever. But I actually looked it up a little bit before Jay came over to the house, and sadly, I have nothing to give you.
Yeah, Brian's usually kind of the color analyst, and I'm like the guy's like, I'm Mr. Stats,
Mr. Analytical. Yeah, I mean,
what the fuck, man? Okay, so I tried desperately to find one interesting fact on every fighter on this card, and I gave up. I had nothing but time. But rather than look up shit on I just gave up because, okay, in the main card, 4 fighters don't have Wikipedia pages. In the prelims, 3 fighters don't have Wikipedia pages. And on the Fight Pass prelims, 4 fighters don't have Wikipedia pages. What the fuck is the theme here?
Yeah.
That nobody knows who these people are. They're operating like spies in this European Union.
I mean, I get it. It's UFC Croatia, and it's just like, well, I mean, who do we really have to throw out there that's of note from Croatia?
Who isn't simultaneously suspended and retired?
Right. That's where I was getting at. Yeah. I mean, it's nobody. There is nobody. So I don't know if this is essentially.
Well, except for Stipe, but he's already booked for one.
Right.
They obviously weren't going to throw him onto a Fox Sports 1 card. But yeah, to your point, he's the only guy who I can see wearing checkered shorts, who, thanks to Reebok, isn't going to be wearing checkered shorts.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I don't know if this is just a nod to the UFC and trying to look towards Europe as far as higher caliber fighters, maybe, or if it's just them basically trying to, you know, global conquest and hit different spots.
I think it's one of the things that they always capitalize on. It feels like so often the first fight card of any new location is like, hey, we're here. You should be fucking grateful for anything that we give you. And we are watching the little
tiny Japanese dude knock one out of the park. Are you kidding me?
What a
that is amazing.
That's amazing. And this fight card sucks dicks.
Right.
You know that your MMA card sucks when baseball is more exciting.
Hey, come on now. Come on. I'm a big baseball fan.
So am I. But there's sentiment to it, and there's a lot of Americana to it. We watch MMA because it's nonstop action. It's just a frenetic melee. Baseball, not so much. But let's get to the stupid fight card. So, looking at the Fight Pass prelims, the 4 assholes who don't have Wikipedia pages, I'm not talking about.
Well,
boom.
I mean, so hold on. I feel like coming up in the upcoming UFC ventures, whatever they may be, if we do come across any UFC fighters who don't have Wikipedia pages, we should make them.
Yes. Courtesy of Overtime MMA podcast.
Well, I feel like that is something that we can do, right?
I
feel like we would actually be doing a service.
How the fuck do you manage somebody and not make them a Wikipedia page, man? I feel like if you're an MMA manager, you need to make sure that somebody's had a physical, that they have a passport, they got insurance, they have a fucking Wikipedia page. It's not that hard.
I feel like we might actually be able to get some kickback out off of something like that. You know,
I just realized that we don't have a Wikipedia page, so I am so full of shit. I'm going to go home and make a Wikipedia page. I'm sorry to our fans and followers.
Or make one for us. I mean,
yeah, how about that shit? And peer edit it, motherfuckers. But anyway, those 4 assholes.
Nope.
The only thing I'm going to talk about is how one guy's last name is Cannoneer, which sounds like somebody who operates a cannon. So if you don't knock out Cyril Asker, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you with soap and a fucking sock.
Cyril Asker, come on.
Get the fuck out my face. So Robert Whiteford is fighting Lucas Martins. This is going to be a mediocre fight. You have 2 500 fighters in the UFC. Rob Whiteford 2-2. Lucas Martins 3-3.
2-2-3.
Yeah. Both of them lost to Darren Elkins. That's pure entertaining fact for these fuckers because I got nothing else. Lucas Martins on a 2-fight skid, and he's coming off an 11-month layoff. Whereas you got a guy, Robert Whiteford, he trains at ATT, and he has 6 KOs, 2 submissions, and 4 decisions. So based on only that information, I'm going to go with Robert Whiteford.
Makes sense.
That's all I got. Can I say
I'm
why?
not a betting man, but I'm gonna go with him.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure. You know, he's probably the favorite just to make me look like an asshole. But I like throwing money away, so whatever. Then Damian Stasiak, Fili Pijic, and Damir Hadzovic. Fuck you guys. Go make Wikipedia, and we'll talk to you. So I'm going for. Oh yeah, I actually do think that Mirbek Tasimov is going to win. He also has a Wikipedia, so he's going to beat the shit out of Damir Hadzovic.
So that's how we're going off of. It's who has a Wikipedia versus who doesn't.
Well, check this shit out. So he's coming off of a 10-month layoff, but his last 3 fights were a TKO and 2 outright KOs. So I'm like, damn, son.
So he's got some dynamite.
UFC.
Yeah,
exactly. So let's go with it.
All right.
Tasimov, don't fuck me over on this one. People made me look like assholes all last week because I was like, hey, I'm a lawyer, and I'll talk about how John Jones is totally not going to get in trouble. And then John Jones spent 48 hours in fucking prison. Thanks, everybody.
Technically, it's jail, but I mean,
you know what I mean.
To us white boys, I guess it's prison.
Yeah. Anything that has a bar around it makes my butthole pucker. I drive through the projects, and I see how they have the bars on the windows, and even being on the outside of those bars makes my butthole pucker. Nope. Yeah. Then we have Ian Entwistle, which I just like the name. So I'm going to root for him. There's Alejandro Perez. Alejandro Perez is the tough Latin America bantamweight winner. That's kind of neat. And he retired Scott Jorgensen from the UFC. Scott seemed to be really excited. I don't remember a few months ago he tweeted, free agent, smiley face, and then he never returned. Like, have you seen,
sometimes that works and sometimes it's very, very bad.
You've seen Judge Dredd, though,
right?
But still, that's just Stallone, not the new one.
Right.
Do you remember when they released the guy into the wasteland, like the original captain, who he ends up finding later? That's what this was like for Scott Jorgensen. He was like, awesome! Not realizing that only barren waste and cannibals awaited him outside of the UFC.
I think I know what you're talking about, yeah.
So, Entwistle lost his UFC debut, but he's 2-1 in the UFC. So he's on a 2-fight winning streak.
Okay,
hey, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
Perez is also 2-1 in the UFC. Entwistle, he beat Anthony Burchak, who beat Ryan Benoit and Joe Soto. Joe Soto, you might remember, fought for a title, so that's kind of neat. But I was thinking this. I think that if anybody wishes they could make 125 pounds, it would be Entwistle, because all he has to do is make it. And then if he got cut this fight, whatever, he could just go on the Ultimate Fighter and fight Demetrius Johnson if he wins. We're going to talk about that later, but for those of you who don't know, the next Ultimate Fighter season is for a #1 contendership at the UFC Flyweight Championship. These guys are bantamweights, but I'm just sitting there thinking, like, bantamweight, you're fucked for a while.
Right.
Because you have Uriah Faber, you have TJ Dillashaw, you have Rafael Assunção. Those are just those 3.
Just those 3, and you're screwed.
You're not fighting this year for a title at the very late. Even if Dominic Cruz stays impeccably healthy, which we obviously hope he does, gets through Faber, gets through it, because also
it's that little triangle.
Yeah, he has enough of a draw, Dominic Cruz, to where he can afford to be, a 3-a-year fighter, a 2-a-year fighter, instead of having to be like these guys who just constantly have to generate, because he has that opportunity to be on TV, generate interest.
Right.
He's not Demetrius Johnson, who, despite his best efforts, is trying to put himself out there, but just never seems to get.
See, the thing with Cruz is he doesn't need to sell himself; it's already there. And also, it's like he's a very colorful analyst when it comes to just talking in general, being able to dissect things and analyze, and then also just talk shit and be rather witty.
If I ever saw a guy who I thought could be like the next, Dana White, I would love to see it be somebody like Dominic Cruz.
Right.
A guy who is very savvy, intelligent, funny, charming, good-looking, sharp dresser. I mean, they did the UFC 190, 199? Yeah.
Oh, the promo thing that they did over at the forum?
Exactly, and that was today. And he fielded questions even about Dada 5000 Kimbo Slice, and was not only analytical, but
Did you hear about all that shit that happened to Dada?
Dada died.
Like 2 heart attacks or something?
2 of them. It's fucked up to have 1. Then he had 2 and kidney failure, and he's still thinking about possibly returning to MMA. Hey, buddy.
No.
You are already uninsurable. I will tell you that now. But anyway, this fight isn't about any of those guys. But our point being, at bantamweight, it's kind of hard to see that silver lining because,
it's true.
A, nobody's going to talk as much shit as Dominic Cruz, Uriah Faber. That is the biggest thing that the bantamweight division can do and could have done for since the inception of the bantamweight division. Let's be fair.
But I mean, if you look at it, it's literally a lose-lose. I mean, you're going from a bantamweight that's completely stacked to a flyweight where it's not technically that stacked, but I mean, look who's on top.
Yeah, well, flyweight's even worse because not only has DJ unceremoniously destroyed his entire division,
the whole division,
and nobody has risen up. Nobody, even Ian McCall, couldn't string together 2 wins to fight.
Right.
That's something that people really need to do.
It's kind of interesting the way UFC's gone about doing it. They don't want to necessarily go out and just straight up say, okay, well, we do technically have nobody in our division who can give DJ a run for his money. But we want to continue to have him be a active champion. So let's try and think outside the box and do this whole Ultimate Fighter #1 contender, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I haven't really looked into who's going to be actually on the...
It's open tryouts.
Okay.
Anybody, you and I, if we could make 125,000.
So technically, could any of the guys in the division go to the Ultimate Fighter?
I don't think that's the possibility, though, because somebody made a joke about Joseph Benavidez putting a mustache on and being like, hello.
That would be pretty good.
Really, if he was willing to take the risk, why not? Because in order to get to the title, he would have to beat, 6 guys in a tournament style to establish himself.
Right.
Why the fuck not? The only person who's proven they can beat him is DJ.
That's what I'm looking at. I mean, from somebody like, if I were to be in a position as, for instance, Benavidez, and you're in a division that's completely laid to waste from DJ, you got to think to yourself, okay, what's the next best shot for me to get a title shot?
Yeah.
Hey, they just announced #1 contender when you go to the Ultimate Fighter house. So, hey, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to destroy a bunch of people, and I'm going to get my next shot.
Yeah.
But
I think that leads me to believe that Joseph Benavidez would not do that is the fact that he is married to Megan O'Leary, which means he goes home to her every night instead of 14 shirtless drunk dudes.
Right. That is true.
So but he obviously likes hanging out with shirtless dudes because he's a member of Team Alpha Male. Oh, that wasn't funny. But anyway, as far as this fight goes, I got nothing for you. They're the same guy as far as the UFC is concerned. 17-6, 9-2. It doesn't really matter. They're interchangeable. And the fact is, I couldn't even get myself up to watch old footage of these guys because they're not relevant. They're not going to be relevant. They're not ranked.
Right.
One thing I didn't look at, and I really ought to have, I don't know, I've been doing this thing where I look at how many ranked fighters appear on cards. And it's been so often in the UFC that there's like 2 fights that involve ranked fighters. But I don't remember any of these guys being particularly high ranked, if ranked at all.
I mean, that goes to where I kind of have an issue with the UFC when it comes to fighters technically not getting the fight they deserve and what people think should be the fights. There's no ranking system whatsoever. Even people who are not in the top 10 or this or that, say somebody that's in the top 15, if there's number 13 against the number 14, this or that, it's going to be one guy in the top 15 and then one guy outside of the top 15 and vice versa. And there's absolutely no kind of rhyme or reason why they're choosing this. It's just whatever it's like they're almost like shaking magic ball and then being like, all right, well, this is or drawing out of a hat. You know?
It's one thing that's interesting. People talk about the difference between MMA and boxing is that MMA, you're pitting the best against the best at all times because it's so competitive in so many different ways.
Are they saying
build the guys up?
Are they saying it's the best of the best just because it's the UFC and technically UFC is the best? Or
well, also just in terms of ranking, like the UFC does not set people up to look good for long periods of time. Like the longest streak in the UFC would be John Jones, I think at this point, right?
Right.
Which is, that's not a 48-0 like a Floyd Mayweather or something like that. So the idea being is just it's so difficult all the time, and they don't really set their guys up. Look at Conor McGregor. I mean, he's a champion. He's their biggest draw, and he's also not undefeated in the UFC. So that just shows you where they don't set themselves up for easy fights, and also very hard to do, because even a guy who, let's say, has no knockout power could still choke you the fuck out. Let's say a guy who has no wrestling could, just outlast you with stamina. There's so many things that you can really take into account. And so I'm looking at the Zagreb card. So obviously Ben Rothwell and JDS were both ranked. You have number 4 versus number 5. Doesn't make any fucking sense to me, but whatever. And then I don't see a single ranked fighter. Oh, Marina Moroz is number 9 at women's atomweight, strawweight. And that's where it ends, folks. So that just shows you, like, this is as much a throwaway card as you could have. Right. You don't even have these guys fighting number 15, 14, 13, or any of that last territory. These guys just fighting each other for what the fuck ever's sake. Let's make some tickets. We'll sell some shirts. So what about it? So who wins? I don't fucking care. Right. Next, we have Nicholas Dalby, whose hair is too tall to fit on his UFC profile. Did you notice that?
No,
I noticed that. That shit fucking annoyed me. I thought my hair was tall, and then I see this asswipe with his hair. Cut it. Get a haircut and a real job. How about a 9 to 5 like us, and then you can come record a podcast and call someone who you don't know an asshole for having hair. But I digress. He's fighting Zach Cummins, who was on Chael Sonnen's team on The Ultimate Fighter. Okay. Who seems like a lovely man. So I'm going to root for Zach Cummins. Do I think he'll win? Fuck, why not? Because the Dalby guy, he's 1-0-1. His last fight was a majority draw, which we were actually happy about. It's the Ireland card or whatever. Right. So, yeah, Zach Cummins is 3-1. So, hey,
Zach
there's
Cummins,
something
go
there.
For it, man. Build on that. Let's go for a 4-1.
Oh, but I did want to make a point that Zach Cummins is technically 3-1 in the UFC, but he was supposed to fight at the Ultimate Fighter China season finale, but he came in 8 pounds overweight, and his opponent said that he wouldn't fight him. So I count that as a loss. So to me, Zach Cummins is 3-2, but he obviously has more tread on the tires and more experience in the UFC. I'm going to root for him just because why not? Because I have no reason to care about the other fights.
Because we flipped the coin, and he ended up on top.
So Marina Moroz is fighting Christina Stanciu. Stanciu is making her UFC debut against the number 9th ranked fighter because that makes perfect fucking sense. It's not as though we have a bunch of other people below 10th for somebody to debut against, but whatever. So you have Marina Moroz, who's 1-1 in the UFC. Her only loss came to Valerie Letourneau. Why do I know Letourneau's name? Because she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk and lost. But it just shows you the caliber of fighter. She's only 1-1, and one of those losses was to a number 1 contender at one point.
She's 1-1, and she's ranked number 9.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that's all you have to think about, you know what I mean?
But yeah, kind of an interesting fight. The one gal who's making her debut, the Christina Stanciu, she's a kung fu fighter, and she was a medalist in 2010, 2012, and 2014. And if she is a prolific striker, I'm going to be so stoked because I've talked shit to my father-in-law every weekend for years because his church offers a Kung Fu Sansu self-defense class. And I told him that if he wanted to get in the backyard and slap each other, I'm more than happy to. I'm not going to do it in my fucking pajamas. So if there's a Kung Fu fighter who makes me look like an asshole, kind of into it. That'll be fun.
Right.
Next, we have Igor Pakrajak versus Jan Blachowicz. God damn it. So Igor Pakrajak, check this shit out.
I'm saying Cracker Jack. I'm sorry.
He's returning to the UFC after a 3-fight winning streak out of the UFC. None of them have Wikipedia pages. But before he got cut from the UFC, he was technically on a 5-fight losing streak that was separated by one to Joey Beltran, who ended up testing positive for steroids. That became a no contest. So he lost, and then it got overturned. Then he lost, then he lost, then he lost, then he cut, then he fought 3 guys who don't have Wikipedia pages because they can't be bothered to be socially relevant, and now we're here.
So I don't know, I mean, looking at his record, it's actually not that bad. But then you actually kind of do like that,
if you look at the number,
fine details, and you're like, well,
28-12. Hey, I've heard of worse than that, right? And then you look at this, what's Conor McGregor's little teammate who's always Artem Lobov? I'm a dancer. He's I think he's 12-11 in his MMA career, which is horrible. But people still root. I don't understand that. This guy he doesn't aesthetically look that horrible, but this is what you get when you have a padded record before you come to the UFC and you're swimming with sharks. It's kind of the Travis Brown effect. Remember how we did that analysis when Travis Brown fought Matt Mitrione? Their records are truly very similar if you remove all of Travis Brown's
shitty fights.
Yeah, pre-UFC.
Absolutely.
So Igor Pakrajak is fighting Jan Blachowicz. Jan Blachowicz is 1-2 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight skid, but here's the interesting part: his win came over Ilir Latifi. It was a TKO to the body, and then he did some strikes. And Latifi looked badass against Sean O'Connell and looked even better against Jean Vellante. So the one thing that he has is that he's beaten somebody who's become better than they were.
Right.
I don't suspect if Jan Blachowicz loses, I think that he's going to get cut. And that's a theme throughout this whole fight card, if I haven't talked about it already, is that anybody can be cut because none of these people matter. If Mike Wilkinson can get cut, a guy who's 2-2 in the UFC, why am I watching these people? Because they knew they were going to have his Zagreb cards. They're like, yeah, let's cut some fat and we'll put a bunch of assholes who are interchangeable, and then nobody's going to sign a fucking petition to get back in the UFC.
I'm kind of interested to see what the view, the ratings are going to be.
Oh,
for this.
God, on Fox Sports 1?
It's going to be fucking atrocious.
Oh, yeah. This is a fight card. If you know what you should do? Just fucking ignore it and listen to the radio theater version of it next week on this show, because I'm so pissed off at the idea of this show. I'll reenact every good part. I'll impersonate the announcers.
That would be pretty good. I would listen to that.
And if you watch the video stream, I'll even dance like Ben Rockwell when he beats JDS. How about that? So let's move on up the card.
Do the Cabbage Patch dance.
Shake what your mama gave you. But Timothy Johnson, the Mr. Mustache himself, is fighting Marcin Tiber Tabura.
No idea.
Son of a bitch.
Nope.
You just took off a letter of your last name to make your nickname. What? You lazy son of a bitch. You couldn't rhyme. You couldn't be bothered to look at a thesaurus. You're just like, I've always wondered what my name would look like. Somewhat shorter and less exciting to say. God damn it. How about this? Kamura Tabura. I'm just spitballing here. There's a bunch of things. Gamura Tabura.
Talk about another. I mean, just looking at his stats, it almost looks like it's another pattern. I mean, 13-1. That's actually pretty decent of a record prior to the UFC.
Yeah, he's making his UFC debut. He's 13-1 in his last 14 fights, but he just won his last fight. The fight before that he lost, and he won every fight up until then. He'd been fighting an M1 Global. So I thought it was kind of interesting that really he's on a 1-fight win streak and got a UFC contract. So I'm assuming there was already something kind of in the works before that.
Right.
But the Tabura guy, he's not bad. 5 TKOs, 6 subs, 2 decision, and he's fought literally no one I've ever heard of. If you put that in the UFC, right, that's a respectable record of good guys, but then you put it outside the UFC, and suddenly I don't give a shit.
Right.
You compare that
13-1. That's you're in top 10 at least.
Hell yeah,
top 5.
You're Neil Magny territory, right? And so you look at Tim Johnson, right? 9-2, not the most illustrious record. Then you look at the fact he has 5 TKOs, 4 subs, never gone to decision. The guy is a fucking animal, and you can tell by the curly hairs on his stomach. I want you to look at it. They're hypnotizing. So between that stomach, that bald head, and that mustache, the man is pure sex. Unadulterated
those stats,
sex.
Man.
So I'm excited to see him. His last loss, his only UFC loss, to Jared Rosholt. And this is a perfect example of what happens. Jared Rosholt won. As soon as he lost, his boring ass got cut. Whereas Tim Johnson is super exciting. That loss, I would never have even thought about it if it wasn't for the fact that I could directly compare it to Jared Rosholt.
Right.
I made jokes at his expense, but the thing is, I've never liked Jared Rosholt. He's never done anything to actively make me like him, ever. Not on social media, not in his fights. He's just there, and he's taking up money that I would love to see a credible fighter, a ranked fighter, get.
Exactly.
But whatever. I'm going with Timothy Johnson on this, if only because I want to see that mustache well groomed and fed for years to come.
Mustachio.
So then we have Francis Nagano. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Versus Curtis, quote, Razor Blades.
That is pretty clever. I mean,
I like it.
It's so obviously that would be his name that I like it.
It's like it was ordained. Like his parents were like, you can just see like the dad rubbing the belly and putting the headphones on with like little Bach and Beethoven on. He said, he's gonna grow up to be a fighter, so we're gonna make sure that we change our name legally so he could sound like the MMA equivalent of Razor Ramon.
Right. I was just gonna say. I mean, if he comes out like a Razor Ramon outfit and has a toothpick and hey, Chico, that would be fucking amazing. He would be my new favorite fighter.
Absolutely. So he's making his UFC debut. He's from Oklahoma. He's 5-0. All of those 5 TKO. He sounds deadly. Then you go to Francis Ngannou, and he's from France. And he's 1-0 in the UFC. That's the best I could do with the limited information available to me with the infinite possibilities of the internet. The internet is the library at Alexandria times 1,000, and you add porn to it. That's how much information there is on the internet. And then you get to this fight card, and it all dries up because nobody gives a fuck about these fighters, not even their friends and family who have every opportunity to put the information out there. I'm rooting for the Razor Kid because of the name, because of the record, and because I am going to say in this one instance, for the first time in my life, freedom fries sounds so much better than French fries.
That's true. Absolutely.
With that, we move to Gabriel Gonzaga, who I'm convinced is on this card only to be the bad guy because it is in Croatia, where, as Brian alluded to, he knocked out Mirko Krokop, then was knocked out by Mirko Krokop.
Exactly.
So he beat their champion, then got bitched by their champion, and so he's only there to be this like lightning rod of hate and somewhat interest. And he was gonna fight Ruslan Magomedov, and now he's fighting himself, Derek Lewis, who's an incredibly dangerous fight for him.
God, that is an awful replacement, isn't it?
Right? What the fuck are you thinking? If you care about Gabriel Gonzaga as a person, why would you let him take this fight?
Why would you? I mean, somebody who's susceptible to having a weak chin goes up against a guy who has 13 knockouts out of his 14 wins?
Yes.
Oh God. I mean, we were talking earlier. I mean, essentially, I feel like the only way Gonzaga's going to win is if Lewis gasses out and Gonzaga ekes out that win in the third. Within the first 2, I'm going to give it to Lewis because, I mean, essentially from his stats, it looks like he doesn't necessarily gas in the first or the second because majority of his knockouts come in round number 1 and round number 2.
Absolutely.
So,
and then you compare it to Gabriel Gonzaga, who's 1-3 in his last 4. And you look at the 3 that he's lost to: Stipe, Matt Mitrione, Mirko Krokop. So the first 2, you're like, hey, those guys are relevant. I still don't know those names.
Right.
And then you're talking about the guy who's retired and currently on suspension for human growth hormone. So it's just.
But then you even go even deeper than that, and you look at all of his past losses.
Travis Brown, he lost via TKO.
Knockout.
TKO,
knockout.
decision.
TKO, knockout.
JDS knocked his ass out. Shane Carwin knocked his ass out. Fabricio Verdum knocked his ass out before it was Fabricio that we know now. So pre-flying knee to Cain Velasquez is fucking – or wait, no. The flying knee was to Mark Hunt. I digress. That he got. So here's the thing: Randy Couture, heavyweight. Not really.
No.
Let's be honest.
No.
He's a light heavyweight guy, right?
He
was the heavyweight champion, and he beat Gabriel Gonzaga when immediately after Gonzaga beat Crow Cop. So that just shows you it's not so good for him.
Yeah, it's kind of iffy on that one.
Oh wait, what the fuck? He's lost to Fabricio Verdum twice via TKO. I didn't notice the first one. The first one was in 2003. Add context to that. Brian and I were in high school, right across the street over there.
Right across the street. It's amazing.
So that's how long it is. I'm a doctor now, and I am going to be married because I'm an adult man. And he was losing to jiu-jitsu champions via TKO when I was a child. So let's be real here. If you're Gabriel Gonzaga's friend, why the fuck did you let him accept this fight?
Yeah.
You know what? Don't take a fight.
Initially, when I first saw the fight, the people going up against each other, as far as on the card, I was just like, Gonzaga. I mean, he had those couple good fights. I mean, Derek Lewis. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the name. I'm gonna go with Gonzaga, and Jake was like, oh, all right, that's fine. Go with Gonzaga. You know the name, why not? And then I clicked on the name Derek Lewis, and I was just like, oh God!
Well, because Brian,
what have I done?
I walk in and Brian's like, "Oh yeah, that one's just a gimme," and I'm like, "Yep." And as I'm peeling off my Tom's shoes that were stuck to my feet, I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm expecting because that Derek Lewis guy, right? And then he starts saying, "Because Gonzaga," and I was like, "You're fucking with me. You're fucking with me right now because
Right.
Unless Gonzaga has a mustache on, there's no reason to talk about Gabriel Gonzaga.
And then I, further investigation has led to me believe I was so very wrong.
Yeah. Let's backtrack on that one. We're both picking Derek Lewis. I'm picking him in the first round. I truly suspect.
Yeah, you know what? I'd say Derek Lewis, if not first, second round. I don't see it going the distance.
Yeah. So maybe he'll find himself ranked.
I feel like
not.
I feel like Gonzaga initiates too much. He doesn't necessarily back away and try and pick his shots, this and that. He kind of just goes in and
That's the great thing about heavyweights is they plod.
Right.
Gives them a greater pivoting
I have
power.
that in my notes. Plod.
That's all he does.
I feel like the person who kind of, when I think of plod, a la Roy Nelson. That's the first person that comes to mind.
I will applaud your analysis.
There we go.
Moving up to the main event, a guy who didn't used to plod, but now seems to find himself plodding, Junior Dos Santos.
Right.
He used to be really savvy on lateral movement, and then I don't know what happened.
You see him fight like the early Cain Velasquez fights, and you're just like, wow. I mean, he's got some good footwork, and then even the Mark Hunt, and then like as of late, you're just like, why are you just trying to stand and bang with these guys?
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't make any sense to me. His power doesn't necessarily come from one shot. It's usually come from setting up a shot. So he does have knockout power, but it's a technical power. It's not just like a Roy Nelson.
He needs to get those angles.
Yeah,
you know what I mean,
and he has every opportunity to. It's very strange.
And he's light on his feet too. Yeah. He's light on his feet for a heavyweight.
Yeah, he only usually weighs in like the high 230s. He's the guy who I've given as an example of who would be a great cruiserweight champion.
Right.
But I've never heard of him having a knee injury, foot injury, hip injury. So I don't know why the lateral movement kind of stopped. But then let's juxtapose him with Ben Rothwell, who's a guy who's like, how do you keep doing this shit?
Essentially a plotter.
Yeah.
He is a plotter. He is a healthier Roy Nelson.
I would if Roy Nelson and Josh Barnett had a baby. I'm not kidding, because he submitted Josh Barnett, and going into that fight, I was like, he's gonna lose to Josh Barnett because I like Josh Barnett, and Josh Barnett is a good grappler.
And then he
made me look like an asshole. The only time that Josh Barnett had ever been submitted was to strikes. And then he chokes them up. He doesn't even choke him. He uses a go-go choke, which apparently doesn't even restrict your air. It just crushes your Adam's apple and makes you just whimper and tap out. So that sucked. But my point being, so he's coming off of, he beat Josh Barnett, Matt Mitrione, Alistair Overeem, and Brandon Vera. That's his streak right now. Then you go to JDS, and his win streak is 0 because he just lost to Alistair Overeem. So why the fuck is a guy who just lost to somebody who Ben Rothwell beat 3 fights ago fighting him? because it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense at all.
It goes to the point of the consequences, because the UFC is even promoting this fight as Ben Rothwell is fighting his way to a title shot. JDS is fighting to avoid a 2-fight losing streak.
Right. But the way I look at it, I mean, hey, if you're JDS and you were once a champion in the UFC, right? Because he beat Cain Velasquez for a championship, right?
He did.
If I remember correctly. So
that was the UFC on Fox where he knocked him out, and it was like 1 second, and they had 25 minutes set up because UFC on Fox. It was like, oh yeah, we're gonna make sure we can air just this fight. And we're not putting any other fights up.
That's it. Yeah.
That was actually, if you remember, Brock Lesnar was a color analyst at that fight. He wasn't doing the commentary, but they cut to him at the booth, and I was like, what? This is weird. There was a time where you were shooting star plexus, pressing people and doing stuff at WrestleMania on a quad, but that's neither here nor there. But it just shows how far we've come, because, like I said, he has a win over Gonzaga. Gonzaga has a win over Rothwell. I mean, MMA match just simply never works. You can't look at it that way, because if you look at it in this regard, then Gabriel Gonzaga should be above Ben Rothwell, and you can't do it.
Right.
In this fight, I really am picking Rothwell because I'm sick of him making me look like an asshole. And,
I guess, I mean, if you're going for the for the guy that you least expect to win, then I mean, how can you really go wrong?
I mean, motherfucker's durable as all shit. If you look at the last time that he was TKO'd was in 2009, and that was to Cain Velasquez. To go before that, it was to Andrei Arlovsky. So the only two guys were Cain Velasquez and a guy who I grew up worshiping, who was my first heavyweight boyfriend. And actually my only heavyweight boyfriend.
Who was essentially going for a #1 contender fight next fight night.
Yeah. So he's had he's fought some really strong talent.
Legit guys that he's gone against, absolutely.
So I mean, and also,
yeah, I mean, I you know what? Like, I hate to say it, just because I like Dos Santos so much as a fighter, as a human being. He's always very humble in his post-fight interviews, this or that.
There was a creepy thing with the kid. Remember the kid?
Right,
that was creepy.
That was a little creepy.
Don't do that again, JDS. And for those of you who don't know, there was a time where he was taking a little boy with him to all of his fights, who was from Brazil, and I never saw parental supervision there. If you ever look at JDS's ex-wife, do yourself a favor and Google that shit. It will haunt your dreams, because I thought that it was a joke. I thought that, I get it. Like, somebody's trying to make it funny because he just got divorced, so they photoshopped him with somebody who is not attractive. It's not that she's the most hideous woman in the world. It's just,
holy shit.
You would just never expect her to be married to a professional athlete. For those of you at the watching on the broadcast, that's her. She looks like Pam from Archer.
She is scared. She does look like Pam, except, I mean, I'm sure she doesn't have a sense of humor.
Yeah, I hope. Maybe she does, and that's why he's like,
I mean,
I could do so much better than you physically, but you just won my heart with your sense of humor.
That's true. That's true. No, going with Rothwell. Absolutely. I'm going with Big Ben.
I have been very tempted to. I was gonna Photoshop this. I was gonna Photoshop a picture of Big Ben, and then just put a bunch of people graduating and have somebody holding up a Juris Doctorate, so that it would be Big Ben versus JD.
Oh God. Oh God.
But I didn't do it. I just decided to talk about doing it on a podcast because that's the kind of guy I am. So hopefully this is entertaining to you fuckers, because this is one of the lamest cards I have ever seen.
Right.
And
it's pretty bad.
It's the thing is, it's like, I think I might just be jonesing. And they're like, be grateful for what you get, because you haven't had credible MMA for weeks now. And so I'm just supposed to grovel and just lap this shit up. I say thee nay, UFC. I will watch highlights afterwards, but I shall not watch this live. I will do anything but watch this live.
Well, I mean, even still after this, I mean, what do we have to look forward to? Rashad Evans, Teixeira.
That's going to be a lame fight.
You know what? It's going to be a bad fight card, too.
What I might want to do, though, is on the night of the Zagreb card, we noticed that Shuto is having an event.
Oh God!
And for those of you who
that could
don't
be broadcast worthy, though.
I think that we might have to live stream us watching this because
it's really
you guys,
bad.
No. It's not bad. It's badass. The fact that this company has the balls to put a card like this and ask people to pay money to see it live. So I'm just going to run down the fight card.
It just gives me chills just thinking about how awful it is.
The guys in the headliner, 5-2 record versus an 8-4-1 record. That's modest. It's acceptable.
Yeah.
Then you go to 4-10 versus 1-2-1 in the co-main event of an evening.
4-10.
Then you go to 5-4 versus 1-3-1 in the co-main event. Then 1-1-1. Then 0-1. Then 1-0. Then 0-0. Then 1-1. Then 0-3. Then 0-1. Then 0-1. Are you fucking kidding me? Is it that dry of a spell? Like, I get that you're the minor league promotion, but unless you're paying these guys in parking passes and peanuts, they have no fucking business being on any kind of televised or marketed MMA event anywhere.
It's awful.
Ever.
It's awful.
So while I am critical of the UFC and their shitty card, at least everybody has won a fight.
It's not Shuto.